When we talk about democracy, of course, we are talking about the rule of law, but we are also talking about the dignity of the individual. And of course, there is also a third part to it, which is society fighting for its freedom and equality. Now, I think that these universal values have somehow been always there in the fight that humanity had done against all form of arbitrariness and dictatorships. We see it especially in European history from time to time. I mean, it covers practically antiquity, also the medieval times and modernity. I think there have been really basic shared common values for humanity. So we cannot say that they only belong to the West or Europe, and it's mainly in today's world. Any country or any civil society in any different country goes back and tries to base its quest for freedom and quest for equality on these universal values. There are many countries in today's world which have anti-democratic principles, I would say. Now, the whole problem is to help these countries, to help these cultures to be able to democratize themselves. I even think that sometimes we need to democratize democracies themselves, because there's a tendency, even in liberal democracies like we have them in Europe or in the United States, to have a kind of a tendency to become either dictatorial or to somehow get beyond the rule of law. So I think it's a task of other countries, especially countries where these universal principles have been applied, and they find a place in their constitutions, but they also find a place in the governments, and they find a place also in the manner of directing or governing countries. So it's very important to always insist and emphasize on these principles, which can help us to fight against arbitrariness and also try to help other countries, or even, I would say, traditions of thought which become anti-democratic. Nonviolence is mainly based on the moral courage of individuals who actually fought nonviolently to change the dictatorial regimes, like in South Africa, for example, with Mandela, or to place, the civil rights in the American Constitution with Martin Luther King, or to be an anti-colonial struggle like for Gandhi in India. The most important part, I think, is in all these different examples of nonviolent action, or in the 20th century, I would say, it has been the consciousness of these leaders like Gandhi, Mandela, Dalai Lama, Václav Havel, and many others, uh, to make sure that while there is a struggle for liberty and equality and, let's say, autonomy, at the same time they try not to use any violence which will somehow take us back to what we are fighting against. So I think that we have not give it a thought very profoundly that democratic theory itself has to be nonviolent. For one, I emphasize on what I call the nonviolent democratic theory, Because up to now we talk about democratic theory, we talk about democratization in countries, but we do not emphasize enough, I think, on the nonviolent nature of this democratic theory and on the nonviolent nature of democratization in countries. So this is, I think, this is the main task of nonviolent action in today's world. Yes, cases of countries like Iran, but many other countries in the Middle East and maybe in Africa and Asia also, is that we certainly have in all these countries a younger generation of citizens who want change. They are very conscious about human rights. They're very conscious about their own rights. Uh, but they have to face sometimes military regimes, sometimes very savage regimes who will shoot on them and when they go and demonstrate. So the risk is to not be able to somehow, I would say, to overcome the dictatorial regime and not be able to do it immediately. It might take something like 50 years, in some places maybe 100 years, a century to do that. But nevertheless, I think this is the right strategy of action. This is the right tactique. For example, civil disobedience, I believe that is one of the best tactiques that nonviolence has promoted in 20th century and in 21st century. I think that it's a rough ride for civic actors. Now, these civic actors, of course, they have to always have this self-consciousness of where they stand and how they have to promote democracy and human rights values at the same time that they are not using violence. Or maybe I would say because they are not using violence that they can promote it and they can be at the right place in their fight against dictatorial regimes. Thank you very much for listening to me. And I've been working on nonviolence for a long period of time. So if any of you who have been listening to this podcast are interested, my last book is called Thinking Nonviolence, which I published it with Bloomsbury. And in that book, actually, I try to develop the idea of why nonviolence is so important in our world and how we can try to promote democracy and human rights through nonviolence. Thank you.